folks, another day of grilling for Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh on Capitol Hill. The big hot button issue today, how he would rule on Roe v. Wade. It, of course, is a major issue that he has to contend with. And there was lots of questioning from various senators. Now, one of the issues that we also saw today, you still had more protesters who were letting their feelings be known. And so that took place as well. And so before we get to Barbara Arnwine with the Transformative Justice Coalition, here is some of what was said at today's hearing.
You made reference. You're talking about the period of time that he was White House counsel. Yep. That material's available to everybody.
So that bit of the material about him that's marked committee confidential is now public and available? Is that what you're saying? If that's what the chairman say, we got a whole new series of questions.
No, not if it's committee confidential. But so you have access to it. But don't forget, 80% of the material we've gotten from the library is on the website of the Judiciary Committee, so the public has access to it.
No,
Proceed.
I want Judge Kavanaugh to have access so that we can ask him these questions under oath and he can see them.
Nothing like two old white men just arguing in front of everybody else. Roe v. Wade was, of course, is a huge issue. Many are concerned that Brett Kavanaugh is going to repeal that law, even though he has said no, it's precedent over and over again. He never really answered the question. He was doing a lot of butt dancing when he was questioned. So here's that exchange.
I said that it's settled as a precedent of the Supreme Court entitled to respect under principles of stare decisis. And one of the important things to keep in mind about Roe v. Wade is that it has been reaffirmed many times over the past 45 years, as you know. And most prominently, most importantly, reaffirmed in Planned Parenthood versus Casey in 1992.
So yesterday, we saw a number of people, 61 in fact, who were arrested for protesting in the hearing room. Well, today, more protesters were there. It wasn't as vocal as it was yesterday, but they still have made their presence felt.
Letting racism like this is like letting a loaded weapon lie around. Dissents against President Roosevelt's decision.
Ask him to suspend.
Justice Jackson's concurrence.
Thank you. All right, folks, joining us right now is Barbara Arnwine. She's Executive Director of the Transformative Justice Coalition. Barbara, how you doing?
It's great to be here.
All right, so yesterday was not as crazy as today wasn't crazy as yesterday, but they started getting into very specific policy issues, and obviously Roe v. Wade was one. Senator Dianne Feinstein kept pushing Kavanaugh on that, and he kept talking about how it was a major decision, and the Supreme Court had affirmed it, and affirmed it several other times. But here's the reality. The reality is Donald Trump said he was going to appoint somebody who was going to overturn Roe v. Wade. The Federalist Society handed him that list of 25 judges. There is no way in hell the Federalist was going to hand him a list knowing full well they could have 5 hardcore right-wing judges on the Supreme Court and he not be very clear in terms of where he stands on that case.
And remember, he is a last-minute addition to the list. And that's only because the Mueller investigation was beginning to close in on President Trump, and all of a sudden he gets elevated to the list because he wasn't on the original list. He gets elevated to the list because of his views about executive power and executive immunity and executive amnesty, all of these issues that are important. And I'm glad that the questioners today went in on him about Morrison versus Olson and what he believes about that case. They were correct to really grill
Okay, first of all, everybody at home don't know what the hell Morrison versus Olson is.
Well, basically,
all y'all lawyers do. People at home know what that means. So what is Morrison versus Olson?
It's basically saying that there is a responsibility of the president to be held accountable to the Constitution to constitutional guarantees.
Well, even when he was
You're not
jammed up
available.
on that, the whole issue of did he believe a president, if he was issued a subpoena, if it was possible, he wouldn't answer.
He dodged.
He did all kind of butt dancing. I'm
He
sitting there going,
dodged.
can you answer the question? It's not hard. His actions pretty much said that no, which is the craziest thing in the world, that somehow there's one person in America who does not have to abide by any criminal statutes.
And also, not only did he dodge on that, he also dodged on the issue of, as you said, on Roe versus Wade. He somehow forgot that he wrote this this opinion for the teenager who needed to have an abortion because of her circumstances.
So there was a teenager who was a legal immigrant who courts have said she could have an abortion.
Right.
He wrote she couldn't.
Right. And he also dissented on, one thing we've heard yesterday. Ben Sasse says something. I hope everybody was listening to Senator Sasse yesterday, because all of a sudden we heard that there's a fourth branch of government called the independent federal agencies, or federal agencies, period, and that they, quote, shouldn't be making law. And you heard that a lot today from Kavanaugh. He really has this viewpoint of the executive branch that is a very, very limited viewpoint, because he thinks only Congress should make laws and that federal agencies shouldn't issue guidances, rules, regulations. He has a lot of problem about what we call federal law enforcement. So it's no doubt that's why he ruled the way he did in South Carolina versus United States, which is the voting rights case where he approved a really ugly voter ID law that South Carolina had come up with that we knew would exclude tens upon thousands of people from being able to vote. And he, wrote this opinion saying even though there was no evidence whatsoever, none of, quote, voter fraud, that was still sufficient justification for this ugly law.
Now, look, it's clear. I don't think there's any way he's not going to get confirmed unless something crazy all of a sudden comes out. But what's also interesting to me, and the last one I want to talk to you about, was his feelings on the issue of U.S. versus Nixon.
Yes.
Okay, same thing. More butt dancing.
Yes.
And they have a quote where he says, I think it was actually wrongly decided. And then he tried to say, well, no, that was really taken out of context, and never really explained the context. And I'm sitting there going, is somebody going to let me know what the hell the context was? He essentially was laying the groundwork, again, that a president can do whatever a president wants to do. And essentially, he is above the law, which is why Donald Trump picked him out of everybody else on that sheet of paper.
Absolutely. And I think, also I do think people need to watch what Lay was going after today about the whole Manuel Miranda hacking of the senators and whether or not he was engaged in that illegal criminal activity. Right. I think we need to keep our eyes on that. That's part of those 100,000 withheld documents. Some of that is there. So we need more information. But I also think that people need to really look at this candidate for his criminal justice viewpoints otherwise. Now, he's got this whole thing about the president is so exempt. But when it comes to the average criminal defendant, he is horrid. He wants, to have widespread search and seizure. He believes in stop and frisk at the extremist, ranges. It's important for people to really look at this candidate comprehensively. And I say, Democrats, listen. At some point, they did you in on Merrick Garland.
Right.
At some point, they really have rigged this entire hearing. At some point, besides just being angry and saying things, what else you gonna do?
Well, first of all, I thought it was hilarious.
What else you gonna do?
See Ted Cruz actually talk about how Kavanaugh agreed with Merrick Garland in about 96% of his cases, and then he said that Garland agreed with Kavanaugh in almost all of his. I'm sitting there going, well, why in the hell did y'all block him?
Right.
If all of a sudden, he was trying to make the case that, well, Merrick Garland was this great guy and that you agree with him in so many different rulings. Oh, yeah, but you were one of the folks who blocked Garland from even getting a hearing. I'm like, come on, that's a massive hypocrite. Barbara, we appreciate it. Thank you so very much. All right, folks.